So I'm going to do an end-to-end demo of the submission of a lawful development certificate application and the processing of that case in BOPS. So this is the starting place on the RIPA service. So I'm going to go through the applicant journey. So in this case, I'm going to type in the postcode of my property. And it will pull through some addresses, and this is from a national database of addresses, which means I can start fetching some property information. So this is retrieving some data that's held on this property. This is pulled from sort of national and local data sets. So as you can see, the property in question has been highlighted on a map. Some basic information on the property. Building type, this is an example of some work in progress, still yet to go. Eventually, this will pull through some information on the building type, for example, if it is picked up as a residential, commercial property, etc. Another thing that the service has done is pulled through planning constraints, and this is constraints information that's been also pulled through from council and national data where it is held. Which saves the applicant having to look at this information for themselves. At the moment, this list is limited to constraints that would affect a lawful development certificate application, but as you can imagine, in time, this list will be expanded. Luckily for this person, this property, there are no planning constraints here that affect their property. So I will continue with my application. With planning history, this is a part of the service that's not yet integrated. This is because, as we know, planning history data varies from council to council, and at the moment this is not integrated. So currently in the user journey, an applicant would still be encouraged to go and search the history of their property, most likely by their planning register or information that's held by the council on their website. So this is one of the first sort of big changes in this application service, and this is an alternative way for applicants to provide the red line plan, site outline, or location plan, as you know it. This is something that's going to be quite different for applicants. This is something we're very keen to hear some live testing on. Generally, applicants will have this already as a PDF that they would commission from a planning consultant or an architect. But this means that applicants may have the ability to do them themselves if they wish. So very keen to hear feedback on this within testing, and hopefully by providing a digital red line, so again that kind of data not documents approach, would hopefully reduce some of the reasons for invalidation, for example not having a north line or a scale bar to a particular print size because this information is submitted as data. As with most parts of the service, as you'll see throughout, I'll refer to it occasionally, there is help and guidance along the way. This is to help applicants through some of the more technical parts, maybe provides a legislative source just so all the information we're asking for has justification, and also some guidance, like for example on how to use things such as drawing tools. This will shortly be updated, hopefully with some new functionality such as snapping to help with this process. But for now, as a basic MVP solution, we hope this offers a good alternative for applicants to use in the meantime. I should probably say this map base is from Ordnance Survey, so hopefully is a sort of good basis for applicants to draw their map on. As you'll see here, the service has also calculated the area based off of the red line boundary. This would obviously help with things such as fee calculations, which will come a bit later on in the service. Which will hopefully be quite helpful for applicants not having to measure this themselves in a separate tool. Of course, if applicants do not wish to use the Draw Out Outline tool, there is the option to upload a file instead. And we do appreciate that not all applicants may be able to use the service, but hopefully this offers a new way to provide this type of document. Service is now going to start asking me some questions about the project. So over here, this is about distinguishing whether this is a lawful development certificate for proposed use or existing use or development. For this project, I'm going to be doing a proposed change to my property. And for a description of the property, I'm just going to copy and paste to save myself potential typos from typing it, but the project I'm going to be doing today is a proposed construction of a hip to gable roof extension and 2 roof lights on the front elevation in connection with a loft conversion. So this is a fairly common householder project that would be done under an LDC application. On here, the service is now going to start collecting some data. This is both data and also some, I suppose, sorting questions to help ask applicants the right question that relates to their property. This is, in theory, a bit of a shopping list. Most projects, particularly aimed at householders, would be encompassed on this list. And applicants would, of course, just select the works that relate to their property. So in this case, I'm going to add some roof lights, and I'm also going to extend my roof. It's now going to ask what type of property this is. This relates to sort of what I pointed out earlier on the select property screen. Eventually, when this information is pulled through from a data set, this question could actually be automatically answered for the applicant. But in the meantime, until we're able to pull through from that data, this question should hopefully be something that applicants can answer relatively easily. So for this project, it is going to be on a house. This is an example of one of these kind of technical questions, which is trying to be posed to the applicant in a way that may be easier to understand. So those familiar with permitted development rights may know that there are certain restrictions on a house that has been converted from a previous use. So instead of posing that to the applicant as saying, was your house converted under this particular piece of legislation, we're trying to use more plain English terms like, for example, was the house always a house, as a way to hopefully allow applicants to answer this question relatively easily. And in this case, this is all information that I should know from my property, but if not, there is an I don't know option, which should mean that applicants should be able to complete the process. It's going to start asking me some more detailed questions, again, something hopefully data may be able to answer in the future, but the illustrations will hopefully help applicants answer this if they're unsure. For my project, it is going to be a semi-detached house. This is an example of more data being gathered by the service. So usually you would just have your proposal description that would contain the amount of roof lights, but actually the service is now able to start collecting that as data. So in this case, I'm able to select the amount of numbers, and this will be provided to the local planning authority, which may help with further analysis down the line. This is again picking out some of those kind of planning questions. This is an example, anyone who's again familiar with permitted development rights may know that one of these is more likely to be more permitted development than the other. And this is not something that's hidden from the applicant. If they look in the further guidance, they will see that if it does protrude more than 15 centimetres, then that is something that would require planning permission and perhaps not be something that someone doing an LDC should do. I will just, in the meantime, assume that this is underneath 15 centimetres and that it is lower than the top of the roof. It was to the front elevation. So again, diagrams help applicants navigate this fairly easily. And likewise on sort of complicated roof projects, some people may not necessarily understand what the term of their roof project is. So these diagrams kind of help them sort it out. So on here, I can see that that is what I want to do. I'm going to be converting a hip roof to a gable roof. And it's now going to start asking me some more detailed questions on that. So something that this service does do is it tries to help applicants if they do happen to maybe go down the route where their project may not be covered by permitted development rights. It does try to assist them. So for example, if I was to select something that me as a planner version of me knows is maybe not permitted development, but an applicant may not, they can still continue through the service. This is just warning users in that big shopping list of projects that they should include roof lights, but hopefully that's something that can be more seamless in future iterations. And answer a few more questions about the project. So it will not overhang, and it will not extend beyond the plane of the front roof slope. And it is going to be 50 meters cubed or less. Materials will be similar. And the extension will not include a balcony. No alterations to the chimneys. It was always a house. And as you can see here, the service has detected that the answer to this question was that the new dormer would be higher than the original roof slope. And all it's warning the user, it says it looks like these changes will require planning permission. We've seen some of this in live testing. We see this as a very good service to applicants because it means they potentially avoid doing an application that would not get them the outcome that they need. So we will go back and we will change our answers. And this is something that applicants can do if they go through the service and they see that that's the result they get. They may want to amend their service and actually submit a application that would not require planning permission. So I will again just go through these questions. Not include a balcony, no alterations to chimneys, and it was always a house. Now it's going to start collecting some data about materials. So materials is something that's usually found labelled on plans as we go through. And this is very much still a part of the service that's work in progress, because what we're trying to work out is what is the value of collecting data on materials. We do know in some cases that officers would find, for example, a property in a conservation area, that actually knowing that level of detail on materials may be valuable. But we do understand that this is not something that applicants would necessarily be used to. So this is very much something we're still working on getting feedback on and working with our partners and stakeholders to find the best solution for this. But for now, it maybe just introduces the idea to applicants of I suppose providing this information as data rather than a label on a plan. Just complete these. Will not include any new windows or any new doors. Now some information about me. So this would be part of the application form that anyone submitting a lawful development certificate will be familiar with. So for this, I am going to have the very original name of Test, and I'm going to be Dr. Test. I like to think of this as my planning applicant pseudonym. This is starting to ask some information about whether any additional contact information is needed. So I'm obvious if I was to say, no, my contact information would not be the same, then it would collect that information as needed. But if it is the same as the property address, then obviously there is no need to collect that further. I'm going to put in my email and my not telephone number. Likewise, the same information about a site visit contact. Some information on ownership. So this moves away from what we've known as the certificate A to D on the standard planning application form, and instead tries to approach the questions with applicants in a different way. We do know that ownership certificates are more of a thing for full planning permission, but it's again just exploring the best way to identify ownership from applicants through this LDC service. Now for drawings and evidence. So I'm going to pull out some plans that I conveniently prepared earlier. But this is so the service encourages applicants to submit plans on individual documents. We do know this is not always the case. So this is something we're testing with users. Some may still want to submit all of their plans on one document. The service doesn't penalise them, of course. They can, of course, just put the plan in multiple slots. It's going to ask some other qualifying questions, and what this does is determines whether any additional plans are needed. So for example, if it didn't show the entire property, the applicant would be encouraged to submit a site plan in addition. But as the other plans do show the full boundary, this is not needed. This is an example where an applicant may not have a roof plan, but if they have a floor plan that shows the dimensions of the roof, then hopefully applicants are still able to complete that and provide the information. But at the very least, this provides a prompt to make sure that applicants have provided the necessary information. And these plans have been identified based off of the project that the applicant has selected. And also there's a 30 megabyte file size on plans at the moment, which has been received with quite good reviews so far. So there's again one of those sorting questions. This would be a prompt for any sections. I do not want to upload any photographs, visualizations. This is a part that is just introduced in testing at the moment. So because the draw site outline is relatively new to applicants, if they have provided a location plan in testing, we don't want to disadvantage them in testing if, for example, they are not comfortable using the drawing tool, but we would still like to get their feedback. So for anyone who is submitting a location plan document, the service does try to give them the best guidance possible to make sure that that location plan is valid. Just for testing purposes, I will be uploading a location plan as part of this. But as with everything, these all have some guidance and some legislative sources that provide justifications to why this is needed. And now moving on to more questions about my application, and what this is going to do is identify the fee relevant to the proposal. So this is going to ascertain whether any reductions or exemptions may be applicable to this application without sort of being too overwhelming to the applicant. They obviously do not need to necessarily go through the fee regulations. This service very kindly identifies that based off of the information they've provided. But in this case, this application is not a resubmission. Or eligible for any exemptions. So this is a nice summary to the user of all the information they've provided so far. They can obviously go back and change their answers. Obviously quite a lot of questions, so that's sort of being worked on in future iterations, but is a good sort of glance for applicants to see what they've submitted so far. And lastly, the legal declarations part. So as you can see, the service very much feels like a very expanded version of an application form. It is now calculated that the fee for my project would be £103, which I can confirm that would be the fee for this project. Now I'm going to go to GovPay, which is the payment engine that's being used for this service. So it will just connect me through. Here we go. So I'm going to use some test payment information. And I will use my other pseudonym. And I will also use that so I can show what happens next. So very simple. Gov.uk is used on a lot of existing payment paid services. So this should be something that applicants should feel comfortable using. This is something we will work out more in testing. Apologies for the delay. There we go. So now it is sending the data. And that is my completed application process. So as an applicant, with all of that information up front, fairly straightforward, hopefully. This is something that testing will tell us more about. The end screen just sort of gives them a bit more information about what applicants can expect. I will now go over to my emails where I have received a notification. And I will just flash these up on screen quickly. So on here, I've got my receipt payment from Gov.uk. I've also got my confirmation from the back office planning system that my application has been received. So this is a statutory notification that just confirms that the application has been received. I'm now going to go over to BOPS and show the other half of the process. So this is the BOPS interface, which I will just walk through very simply. And as you can see, we have a new application. So this is the screen the screen that an officer would see in the back office system. Various tabs sort of show the different types of applications throughout their process. And you can sort them by applications allocated to you, the officer, or all of the ones that are available. Now we'll go into this new application received. So this is the information from the application that I've just submitted. So all the information has been provided. That was the description that I wrote. It's pulled through the UPRN. It's pulled through all the payment information very handily. It's also given me a link to Google Maps if I, as an officer, wanted to do a quick desktop view of the property. I'll wait and see while that loads, and I'll just walk through the rest. This is the site map as drawn by the applicant on the same base map, which means we can very easily sort of check, and there shouldn't be any errors in how that's been drawn. The result from the API user. So this is actually the result that the RIPA service determines. So the RIPA service found that, believes based on the information provided that this would be permitted development. So it's just because the officer, quick glance of an initial assessment, but obviously this would have to, the officer would then need to go and check any planning history, for example, anything that removes PD rights, any historic conditions, etc. The proposal details, these are all the questions answered by the applicants that would contain everything that was in the application form. So if I was looking for information on ownership, it will be in there. The documents as submitted by the applicant, I will go through these shortly. Any constraints identified by RIPA in that GIS query? In this case, there were no constraints, but if, for example, there was any inaccuracies, I'd be able to manually update and override those. Key application dates automatically calculated from when the application was received. Contact information for the applicant. And there is a section here on consultation. Obviously, consultation is not necessarily a piece of core functionality for the Lawful Development Certificate service, but you can imagine where this may go in the future. And then here is the step-by-step process of, as an officer, what I would go through to validate the application. So I will run through this process. So the first thing I would do is I would go into the documents and take a look at them. So conveniently, because of the slots that these documents were uploaded in, they've been pre-tagged accordingly. So if you remember when the applicant saw upload your existing floor plans here, roof plans, elevations, etc. This is sort of pre-tagged them, which is very helpful as an officer when you're going through sort of documents. I would then go into each of these individually. I would download them, I'd measure them, make sure they scale correctly, etc. As part of the validation process. I'm going to say that this document is valid. I'm going to give it the plan reference of 1. I do want it on the decision notice, and it will be publicly available. And what that means is for the API that would maybe go onto a future planning register, but that is not currently within scope of the projects. But you can imagine where that would go. Likewise with proposed floor plans. That is all valid. Plan 2. And so this roof plan would probably not be needed because it is a duplicate document. So I'm going to archive it. So archiving just means I can organise my documents and make sure that no duplicate plans sneak in. But it's all presented on the same screen, as you'll see shortly. So it's quite an easy user interface. So this document that I've archived is now just at the bottom. If I did, for whatever reason, make a mistake, I'd be able to restore it with the click of a button. That will be the same for this one. I'll archive it. And with these existing elevations, that's all valid. Want it on the decision notice. And just to show off this functionality, I'm going to hypothetically say, well, actually, I believe the scale bar is going to be missing from this plan. If I were validating this, I would say that this is not a valid document as it is missing a scale bar. So I've not been able to validate it. As you can see on here, scale bar is missing. So the document is not valid because scale bar is missing. I would then give that a reference. I would not want to put it on the decision notice because it is an invalid document. Is now giving me a warning that I have an invalid document as part of this application. And then there is this location plan. So any document that doesn't come through tagged, and there may be many reasons why that is, officers can obviously manually tag them themselves. So in this case, I would tag this as a site plan. And this one would be valid, and I would call it the location plan. And I want that on decision notice. So that is all my documents managed very quickly at a glance. We do, however, have this case of this invalid document. So I'm going to request from the applicant that they submit a revised version. And this is done through the validation request feature that Matt mentioned. So I'm going to add a request to the applicant, and I'm going to request that they replace the document. It is identified that this is the document that was deemed invalid, and it's pulled through the invalid reason. So this will be presented to the applicant as the reason why they are to do this this revised document. I will pull that together and I will invalidate the application. So the application has been invalidated and an email has been sent, and very shortly me, the applicant, will receive an email from the back office system telling me that my application is invalid. As you can see here, fortunately it's invalid and has not been registered. So it's now going to request that I make changes, which I will do. I will open up this URL. And while this is loaded, you can see on here it's pulled through the Google Maps of the property if I wanted to take a look at it. So that's very handy. But we're now going into that validation request module. So this is what the applicant would see when they open that link. So it's all been calculated. It's given the applicant 15 working days and told them the date to respond to this request. And it's given the replacement document I need to do. But you could imagine if there were multiple replacement documents, these would be listed here all on this screen. So in this case, it was this document that was made invalid because the scale bar was missing. So the user would then select the revised plan and submit that. So there we go, they've completed their action. So then me as an officer would then look at this application. I would then maybe go off and do some other applications whilst it's taking place. But it's told me I've had one new response to a validation request. So if I open this, it says they have responded with a document. So very conveniently, this revised document has automatically been sent into the document section. So as you can see, the previous document that was invalid has been automatically archived, and the revised version has been automatically put into the document management area. I would then go into this and check this. If it was incorrect, I would go and ask for further amended plans. I need to retag it. So this was a proposed elevation. It is now valid, and it is plan number 4. And I will do it on the decision notice. So with that, all of the documents are now valid, and I will start my determination. Currently with the MVP service, there is no way to do an officer report within the BOPS system. But I would then, as an officer, first I need to mark the application as valid. So I would enter the date. This is automatically configured as the time that the request response was received, which is very useful for backdating. But with that, everything is now valid. And the application is now ready for assessment. The applicant, which will be me, will also have received a notification automatically saying that my application has been validated, giving me my planning application reference and a due date for a decision. Now going into the second part of the assessment. So this is a very basic screen at the moment. As I said, officer report is not fully integrated into BOPS at the moment. This is something I would do elsewhere, but this is where the assessment is recorded. So in this case, I've done my assessment. I've checked through all the proposal details and the plans, and I believe that the use or operation is lawful in this case, as the project is compliant with permitted development rights. So I would copy the relevant extract from my officer report, and this will be shown on the decision notice. I would also now want to send this off to my manager to just to make sure that I've made the right decision, and also for them to sign off the application. So see documents. I believe this is compliant, and I will save. It now is telling me to submit my recommendation. So this is a decision notice that has been drafted based on all the information provided. So you can get a glimpse of what it might look like, saying this would be granted. It'd say this is the applicant's name, all the information, site address, etc. It is also given the reasons that I provided as an officer, as well as all the plans that were submitted as part of the application, and the red line that has been drawn and approved by the person validating the application. So I think this all looks good. I will submit it to my manager and just double check. Now is moved to awaiting determination. And now I'm going to put on my third hat, which is as a manager. So as you can see in here, I have a case that has been passed to me to sign off. This is case 699, which is the one we've been working on. As an officer, I would then review the assessment. So what this is saying, here is what the case officer has written, along with any additional comments. I could then, as a manager, go through, check the proposal details, check the documents, and also make a similar assessment. In this case, I do agree with the recommendation. All looks good, and I will save that. Obviously, if I disagreed with the assessment, I could send it back to the case officer, where they could then review their assessment and redo that workflow. But this has all been good in this case. Now I'm going to move forward to publishing the determination. So as I see now the decision notice as proposed, I will do a check through, make sure everything is correct. And assuming I'm happy, I will then determine the application. And this will complete the application process in BOPS. And a decision notice has been sent to the applicant. So me as the applicant will be sent a decision notice by email. As you can see here. And here I have my PDF decision notice. And that is the end of the demo.